Good evening and welcome, everyone. My name is Chelsea Rosebrook, and I am the president of the Portland chapter of the Native Plant Society of Oregon. I'd especially like to welcome any new members tonight and encourage you to stick around for our social after the program. NPSO promotes the enjoyment, study, and protection of Oregon's native plants, and as part of our mission, we present a speaker each month on timely topics of interest to our members. Tonight, our speaker is Jeannie Stanley, who will be sharing her experience gardening with native plants in a variety of ecosystems and using the Oregon Flora Gardening with Native Plants interactive website. A link will be provided later as the program unfolds. First, let's review some Zoom etiquette. Your audio and video should be turned off during the program. If you have any questions during the program, feel free to click the chat button at the bottom of the screen and type in your questions in the chat box. Our speaker will address those questions as she has time at the end of the presentation. You also may notice that there's closed caption features, which you can click on to enable. We welcome you to stay after the program. At that time, you'll be able to turn your audio and video on and have conversations about tonight's program and any other events coming up or activities. We hope that you can stick around for that discussion for NPSO members and the broader audience as well. A couple of quick announcements for the Portland chapter specifically. Our board is mostly full this year, which is awesome, but we are still looking for a volunteer to help us run our publicity committee. So if you're interested in getting involved in that work with our board, feel free to reach out to any of us via email or drop something into the chat box. We also have a lot of upcoming events or a lot of upcoming hikes throughout the summer. We usually have about one a week. So feel free to check those out on Instagram, Meetup, our member calendar, and there's a bunch that you can pick from in the area from the coast to hood. The next event I want to talk about is our Environmental Professionals Networking event on June 16th. Information is listed on Meetup, and you can also sign up there for that. There's also Douglas Tallamy, who will be presenting in Portland June 17th. By the Association of Landscape Designers and several local soil and water conservation districts. He'll also be presenting via Zoom, so if you can't get there in person, the South Oregon Extension Service is hosting that through the South Coast NPSO chapter. And you can find that information on Facebook. So now let's find out a little bit about our speaker for the evening, Jeannie Stanley. While she attended Oregon State University, Jeannie worked a summer as a soil technician with the Soil Conservation Service in Pendleton, and then transitioned to a ranged conservationist position for 6 months in Fossil. After graduating from OSU with a bachelor's in rangeland resources, she went to work for the Bureau of Land Management in Burns, Oregon, where she served on a soil and vegetation mapping team for 4 years. Jeannie then took some time off due to an injury and returned to the BLM as a botanist on the Roseburg district, where she did vascular plant, bryophyte, and fungi surveys in proposed timber sales for 3 years, and then transitioned to the new district weed coordination position. Jeannie and her husband moved to Alaska, and she was hired at the BLM state office to implement the burn area rehabilitation plan for 6.6 million acres that burned in 2004. By the end of the year, Jeannie had acquired state program lead responsibilities for the forestry, botany, weeds, and reindeer grazing. After 3.5 years, she moved back to Coos Bay, Oregon, and started working for the state office as the weed coordinator, working on the National Environmental Impact Statement for noxious and invasive weeds, including herbicide use. Jeannie was quickly moved to the state weed coordination position for BLM lands in Oregon and Washington and held that position for 8 years. One major project was completion of the statewide, including Oregon and Washington, EIS for noxious and invasive weeds. And when it was time for the Coos Bay District to write a step-down environmental assessment for the weed control, including herbicide use, Jeannie transferred to the district to complete and begin implementation of that project. She served as the contract administrator for both the state and district plans. Jeannie retired in 2021 and has served on the board of the Friends of South Slough National
Yeah, it's hard.
Estuary
Estuarian.
Estuarian, thank you. A research reserve for 5 years. Volunteered for coastal observation and seabird survey team, doing beach bird surveys for several years, and joined the South Coast chapter of NPSO when she learned there was a local chapter. Jeannie is currently also serving as the vice president for that chapter. And moving out to the coast and expanding her garden to include native plants, Jeannie has turned to the long trusted Oregon Flora website. She was enthused to find the gardening with natives interface, which has allowed her to pick and choose plants for her coastal garden conditions. So yeah, now let's welcome Jeannie.
Thank you. That was really nice. I want to thank you all for inviting me and em- okay. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see.
Okay. Okay. Well, somebody else turned off my audio, so maybe I can turn it back on. There we
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and thanks again for inviting me. I have my career has included a lot of restoration work, and we highlighted the noxious weed aspect of it, but really working on weeds is just the first step in a restoration project. So if you think of it that way, um, most of my career is involved, restoration of some kind or another. The Oregon Flora Project has been in process for some time, and it has a wealth of information. And they recently made it really easy for people who are interested in gardening and gardening with natives. I happen to live on 2 acres that's mostly native, so it was pretty easy for me um, to figure those plants out. But what I wanted to share was this database because it's really easy to use. And my goal is to give you confidence in just getting in there and poking around and trying to find things. When I did restoration work, I would use this database, and I'll show you what I did for that. But for now, I'm just going to highlight some of the things about the database.
And Jeannie,
Yeah.
there. Are you sharing now?
Oh, hang on just a minute. Share. Thank you. And share. Okay. Thank you. All right. Can you guys see the Oregon Flora webpage there?
We can. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you look at the drop-down menus here, there's a lot of great stuff. First of all, under the Explore menu, they have a section on grow natives. Also, the one on identifying plants is the one that I use most often. But grow natives makes it really easy for people that are interested in natives to try to find things that will work in their area. On
One,
some of these, go
one more
ahead.
interruption. Can you go full screen on that?
Is that not full screen? It's covering my full screen.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
That's
just
fine
a
then.
minute. So now it's not, now it is. Can you not see the full screen?
The second one was better for me, but I have a different kind of screen. So um,
Okay,
I
there's
don't
the
know.
second
Other
one.
people there, that's closer. Anybody else out?
I
Any
think
other
the second one
comments?
works better for computers.
This view is half the size of the other view.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I would go back to the other one, I think.
Okay, that's a full screen on my screen.
Yeah, okay.
And do we have a moderator that's going to look in the chat or yes, half the size? So, okay.
Yeah.
Um, I'm I'm not going to respond to the chat while I'm trying to get through this first section, and then I can take questions and we can go over those. But yeah, go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll address those as best we can. So, like I said, the first menu gives you a chance to look at different aspects of the database. The second one has all these great little tutorials. So I'm just going to show you one aspect of the Oregon flora, but you can go into this tutorials and look at different aspects of it. They also have publications, some information about the database and how you can contribute to it. One thing that's really interesting about Oregon Flora is it initially started as a database of all the herbarium specimens. So these are plants that have been documented in specific places. This is not typical of a database with survey information, but it is really kind of an interesting, unique thing. And I think now they're trying to incorporate other aspects, other ways of collecting data. Anyway, so if you go to the Explore and just drop down to the Grow Native section, this is the page that you get. And it gives you different ways to select plants or to select the area that you want to put plants in. They have these different assemblages like a pollinator garden, a rock garden, rain garden, woodland garden, or a meadow. So those are kind of some basic types. It also has over here on the left different plant requirements or different areas. So a lot of different information. So for example, do you want to plant in a sunny area, a part sunny area, or a full shade area? What kind of moisture do you have? Are you in a really dry site, a moderately wet site, or a really wet site? So those are really helpful in choosing your plants. Also, this is my favorite right here, the size. What's the mature size of the plant? So if I want a ground cover, I might say, I don't want anything over a foot tall. And then it'll just screen all the plants. So I only have really short plants. Now, if I'm looking at trees, I might go to, 25 or 50 feet. But you can just toggle this across to look at what size your mature plant will be. And then there's also the width. So if you want something, wider or narrower. Other selections that they have is flower color. You can choose what colors of flowers you're interested in, which is kind of fun. Also, when do they bloom? So if you're looking for something that blooms in January, you might kind of be out of luck. So right there, they show just a few things that will bloom, just 6 species that will bloom in January. But especially if you have pollinators, you might be interested in something that blooms all year round. So if you're trying to fill in, like you need more flowering plants in the fall, you might look at what's blooming in September or what's blooming in, October. And so you can see the different plants in that category. Also, if you want to change your search category, you can just come over here and just clear everything and start over. But going down, they have a category for wildlife. What kind of wildlife do you want to support in your yard or your garden, your property? And so like bees, are you interested in bees or beneficial insects? Butterflies, a lot of people like butterflies. So if you want butterflies, you might want to pick caterpillars as well, or hummingbirds. So these are all fun ways that you can select plants. Do you want an annual, a biennial, or something that lives longer in the perennial category? Foliage type. Do you want something evergreen? Or is deciduous going to work for you? And then also plant type. So here they break it down into ferns or similar, grasses or grass-likes, herbs. These are your forbs or most of your flowers, shrubs, trees, and vines. So you can select on all these different categories. And it's just fun to play with it and see what comes up for your area. They also have a category for landscape uses. Do you want something that forms nice little clumps? Do you want something to control erosion? So you can see all these different things. Do you need a windbreak? These are all plants, or will screen for plants that will help you with those categories. Cultivation, this is more about moisture. You want something drought tolerant? Do you have moist soils? Do you have temporary flooding? Do you have a lot of wet flooding? Or do you have like a sandy soil that's well drained? So those will help You select your plants knowing where you're at. This behavior is more about how the plant reproduces, but there's also propagation, which is how the plant spreads. So you can look at those as well. And then this is a good one here, ease of growth. Most people are looking for something that's easier or moderate. Some things might be hard to grow, like Brown's peony, which I would love to have in my yard, but it doesn't freeze over here on the coast very much. So I don't think it's going to survive. So I might skip that one, although I'd really love to have it. And I think this is probably the first place that I would start when I was selecting a plant is look at the ecoregion. And so Basin and Range, that's Eastern Oregon. And you guys would be here in the Willamette Valley, or I think they specifically had one for the Columbia Basin. I thought they had one for the Portland area. But you're solidly in the Willamette Valley. And oh, here we go. Portland Metro, Willamette Valley, Eastern Oregon. Oh, okay. So sorry about that. So you're solidly in the Willamette Valley, but down here, when they talk about what nurseries these plants are available from, you can choose the Portland Metro area or the Willamette Valley, or different. Oh, shoot. Hang on just a second. I have an alarm going off. Sorry about that. So these are different places where you can find the plants that you're interested in. And so looking at those, where I would start down here with the ecoregion and choose what area I was interested in growing things. And then I would go up here and choose the type of garden. For example, if you have a woodland garden, you can just click filter for these. And then these would be all the plants that could grow in a woodland garden in the Willamette Valley. That's still a lot of plants. But you can go through there and say, for example, you want to plant a really shady area. So now that you've got the first two cuts, just say pick full shade, and you want a ground cover, but you don't want it too short. So maybe you want stuff, say, under 3 feet tall, and then it will give you all the plants that could form ground covers in shaded conditions in the Willamette Valley. So it's pretty, and you can keep adding to it. Say, okay, so I want a ground cover, but I want something that's going to be orange. Then it cuts it down to just 2 species. And you can change the flower color. If you wanted white, you can see there's a lot more species there. So this is one way to select things. They have, say you want a pollinator garden, and you can filter for those. Now here, I still have all these categories clicked on, so I could clear those all to start over. And then you could choose, whatever you want. So that's how I would go about choosing these, choosing plants using this database. If anybody has any examples that they want to run through, we can run through that.
We have one question about finding plants for Astoria. So
for
North
Astoria.
Coast.
Okay. So for Astoria, and so right here, they have the Coast Range, which is not the coastal strain, but the estuarine coast would be where, and the Coast Range. Astoria, depending on where you are in Astoria, those would be the 2 areas I would choose. I would probably start with the estuarine coast. And then if you're a little farther inland, also pick the Coast Range. But since that's along the Columbia, you're probably less in the coastal mountains. And as you can see, there's still quite a few plants here. this database has like 4,700, almost 4,800 species in it. In the grow native section, there's only a couple hundred species. So that cuts it way down. Any other questions at this point? Then I'll show you some other fun things in here.
Well, I was just gonna say, Jeannie, you could show us the plant data sheet for the skunk cabbage, since you have the coastal estuarine.
Sure.
But you might have had something else in mind there.
No,
But
that's fine. Let me find skunk cabbage here. I'm not sure. There it is. Okay. So if you click on the name of any species, then this page comes up, and this is the garden sheet. And it will tell you all kinds of information about growing this particular plant. So it likes part shade to full shade. It's moderately easy to grow. They get pretty big. And we were just down near Shore Acres today, and literally the skunk cabbage was 5 feet tall. Typically, it's not that tall, but if you have really wet conditions, it can get quite large. The skunk cabbage, it smells kind of like a skunk, so it attracts different insects, which is great. It does not spread vigorously. It does tolerate lots of flooding. The plants will reproduce by runners, and you can divide it or, reproduce by seed. This tells a little bit more about the basic biology of the plant and what it looks like. But here's what I always look at. See this core profile page at the bottom? This is the main page in Oregon Flora, and this will show you where this plant is known to occur. See the distribution down here? It's pretty widespread. It also tells you the family, the common name, the scientific name, and whether it's native or not. And then this is the garden fact sheet. This is where we were before. So this is where your growing conditions, where you can find that. But then this provides things that botanists always want to know. And it also shows some nice pictures of the plants. So you'll probably flip back and forth between the garden fact sheet and this core profile page to get information about a plant. Is that helpful? Okay, let's look at another plant. We're going to go back to this main page. If we're looking at, say, Astoria, so we're on the estuarine coast. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, here we have some questions. Let's address questions. Is there an area for Astoria? There you go. Any plans to expand into Washington? Since it's the Oregon Flora Project, I kind of doubt it, but I am not an expert on this database. I've used this database for years. I think that would be a good question for the database. And you can go up here to About and send them text messages. Also, Oregon Flora, Oregon State University does a lot of cooperation with Washington and Idaho universities. So, it's very possible. So I just don't know, but I know this was originally started to focus on the flora of Oregon. The moisture category that works best if the site is wet in winter and dry in summer. That's a good question. And I would say it depends. So how dry in the summer is it? Is it really dry? Are you going to be watering these plants? And wet in the winter? And how wet is it? Is it like flooded, or is it just like here in Coos Bay? I live on a hillside. We get 65 inches of rain a year, but we don't get any flooding. So it just depends on your site. Please put your questions in the chat. Yes. Okay. King County has a site that is very similar to this. King County has some really amazing databases. I used to use their databases for weed identification frequently. So that would be definitely a great tip worth checking into. Thank you, Annie. Heavily impacted by invasives, and you're starting from a depleted situation. What would be your first step to address that? Good question. And it depends. So if your invasives are like grasses or just little forbs, that would be different than if your invasives were trees and shrubs. But I guess my philosophy is the best defense against weeds is a healthy plant community. So, and there's as much of an art as there is a science to growing things. You guys have probably already figured that out. And so you really have to take it on a site by site basis. And everybody's got a different idea about what weeds are. So for me, weeds are things that are non-native, and particularly things that have been listed as noxious weeds. But for some other people, there may be some native plants that they consider a weed, because a weed is simply a plant that you don't want. It's a plant in the wrong place. But when you get to the noxious weed category, those are weeds that the state has declared a menace to public welfare. So it depends on what kind of things you're tackling. I don't know if that was helpful. So I'm looking at the comments here. So do you guys want to look at some other plants and things like what they might say?
Yes. It does have a question though about, does it filter for soil condition? So that's kind of a good question.
Well, somewhat. Like here, well drained, you're probably talking something that's a sandy loam to a sand. But it's interesting that they don't really, as far as like, I know a lot of places in the Willamette Valley have that heavy clay soil with the high shrink swell content, which may or may not be an issue in somebody's garden because you water the garden. But if you want something that's going to be drought tolerant, it could survive in those conditions, but not everything that's drought tolerant would survive in those conditions. Yeah, so I don't think they really do, except for the well drained or seasonally wet. I don't think they really address the soil conditions. Ivy and blackberry, for example, are common urban invasives and creeping buttercup. Yeah. So ivy and blackberry are particularly challenging. Same thing with the creeping buttercup. Here's my suggestion from a weed manager perspective. So take as much as you think that you can clean out and keep cleaned out and work on that piece. And then as you have more time, because when you're working with these kind of weeds, it's not just a one and done. You're going to have to commit to like 3 to 5 years of intensive control to get these things under control. They're just not that easy. And so, work on what you can. Don't get, I've done this before. You get really excited, you clean it all out, right? The next year, you're like, hey, what happened? Because they're all back. And a lot of people go, it didn't work. Well, it did work, but what you're dealing with is plants that are more persistent than you think they will be. So you just have to be able to commit to that. And my suggestion is to work on a small area, that you know that you can maintain for the next 5 years. And then as you have time, pick the next area and then pick the next area. It's really important to get those isolated plants that are farther out because those will eventually merge with the main front of the weed population. So get those outliers first. Grow smart, grow safe. Great. So got some good comments here. Any other questions on that? I mean, we can look at some other plants, or I can show you some other fun ways to look some things up.
You're driving.
Okay. So, but just remember, anytime you click on one of these plants, blue blossom, I love this plant, you click on it and it takes you to the garden page. And then if you want more information, where does it grow? For example, see, Thrissophoris only grows native down in these areas. And then you get some isolated things like, up the Umpqua River. But I find it really helpful to take a look at where plants have been collected. And then also remember on this main data sheet that there will be pictures that can help you take a look at what the plant's going to look like. So there's a lot of different ceanothus in the nursery industry. Some of them are native, some of them are not. But they don't tend to spread, so they're usually not a problem. But I'm especially fond of natives, so that's just my thing. And I'm assuming that since you guys are in the Native Plant Society, you're probably fond of natives too. So anyway, and then the garden fact sheet again will tell you about a particular plant. So this one is good for a pollinator garden. I have this plant in my yard. It is absolutely covered with bees when it's flowering. It's in, a drier site for me. It's in a really sandy location. So that it's more like kind of near a rock garden, which you wouldn't expect. But I'm also primarily in a forested site. So it kind of fits all of these. Just some thoughts there. And then, so just, click on a plant name, you get more information about it. You can filter all over the place. When I'm doing a restoration project, this is where I go. I go to explore, inventory plants, and then it pops up this little map. And what you can do on this map is say, since this is the Portland chapter, I'm just going to pick a spot near Portland. Okay. Here's a green space. So let's say my house is right there, right? And I want to know what plants have been recorded around that location. Right here, you can do kilometers or miles. I'm going to do kilometers because it's a smaller distance. And I'm going to do 1 kilometer and then just hit search. And it will show me all the plants that have been recorded within 1 kilometer of that location. So if you're wondering, does a particular plant, would it work in my yard? This is one way to do that. Or like I helped the South Slough with, they wanted to do some replanting for a big restoration project. So I did a lot of searches to find appropriate plants using this same technique. So just explore, identify plants, and then the map. So somebody said, they were at Astoria. You can put a dot there and check out what's there. So just search. So you can see this is a smaller list than what was on in the Portland area. And that's probably for 2 reasons. This area probably has not been surveyed as much as the Portland area because there aren't near as many people there. And also you're on the coastal strand. So there's fewer species there. Creeping buttercup is all through our lawn. Oh, I hate creeping buttercup, and it is really a difficult one to deal with. Um, and it depends on the creeping buttercup whether you're interested in using herbicides or not. Some people are, some people aren't. There are some selective herbicides that could be used. And I've done a lot of pulling of this. I rented a house that had this species, and there wasn't a lot I could do about it. It depends on how much time you're willing to put in and what tools you're willing to use. I don't think you can, I don't think creeping buttercup cares about fertility. They can grow in really low fertility areas or high fertility areas. So, there's some ways that you can fertilize them and get rid of them, which is kind of opposite of what you would expect. And yeah. I mean, in a lawn, somebody may decide that they're just going to till the whole lawn up and start over. So there's a lot of options there. Sorry, I can't be more helpful there, Robin. Oh, and Licia, this is your comment about blue blossom, I'm
Yes.
guessing? Yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
plant.
it grows really well up here.
Great. And that's the Thrissiflorus, or is that the
Yes.
arborescens?
No, it's a Thrissiflorus.
Nice. And it would, because the coastal area, while it's wetter, a lot of the ceanothuses will grow in much drier conditions. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much. And in the Portland area, you're a little bit drier. You probably have, I don't know, what do you guys like, the 35-inch precip range or something? So you're not as wet, but you are warmer. So
Yeah, 37 to 40. Yeah.
there you go. Yeah. Cool. Anyway, so this was the list for the Astoria area. And I put that dot way out on the end. So this is more, kind of a wetland kind of area that I picked. But this is just a fun way and to search for things. I'll go back to the grow native section. Is there and if you want to just see like what kind of plants they recommend for a pollinator garden, you can just filter for the pollinator garden. But I wouldn't just start there. I would also add the ecoregion. Where are you at? Because I think that cuts it down considerably. So that's helpful. And then don't forget, down here at the very bottom, it will tell you where things are commercially available. So say you want the Portland metro area, and it gives you 3 nurseries. But if you want to look at the Willamette Valley, then there's even more. So this is kind of nice. And on each of these nurseries, you can click on those, and they give you a list of all the plants that they sell or have sold. So that's pretty helpful too, I think. Any more questions? It's really, it's pretty easy to work with. You can just get in here and poke around. I think it's fascinating. And go ahead.
There was a question about the nurseries and
Yes.
how it seems to be limited. And since this isn't really a major feature of the Oregon Flora and all they're trying to do to actually make the 3 volumes of Flora, that would be a question for Linda Hardison.
Yes.
But I can put some other resources in the chat to find some other nurseries, a wider variety of nurseries. So
Right. And these are just the ones that have registered with Oregon Flora. And I think, I don't know what their criteria is for these. I know Clearwater Native Nursery down near Bandon is a fairly small nursery, and it's only open by appointment. So I don't know what their criteria are, but some of these look like they're quite robust.
I would say too that the three that are marked, the Echo Valley, the Sylvie Island, and the Shoals Valley, are all NPSO members.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't know what the criteria is for the nursery. I'm sure there are holes in the list. That's great information there. Thank you, Cynthia. And then Paul. Paul, you put a lot of pictures on Facebook. I've seen your pictures. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what their criteria are, but at least it gives you a place to start. Oh, this is a great idea. Eric says you might check with the Oregon Nursery Association. And Licia also has some suggestions there. I know, like the South Coast chapter, we have a native plant sale. I imagine some of the other chapters may be doing something similar. So that's pretty much all I had for you, was just to give you some confidence about poking around in this database to help you find what you're looking for. There is a lot of information out there. You just have to, oh, clear all. You just have to play with it. So any other questions?
Well, Robin in Astoria says, how do I know if my ceanothus is native since it's not supposed to grow in Astoria?
It doesn't mean it's not supposed to grow there. It just means that these are like the blue blossom here, this is the ceanothus we're talking about, I think. If you go to the core profile page, these are the places that it's been collected in the wild. Okay. It doesn't mean that it won't grow there. For example, I have point raised ceanothus, which was from Northern California. It does a beautiful job in my yard in Coos Bay. So it doesn't mean that this is just where herbarium specimens have been collected. It doesn't mean it's the only place that they grow, but this just gives you an idea of where they're native to and what kind of conditions they might grow under.
On that note, Jeannie, why don't you pull up the actual page for ceanothus that shows all the different ones and then
Sure.
the comparison?
Sure. You know, it's funny because I get different, normally the page that opens up for me is not opening up and I'm not sure why. Oh, I know so right here is a search bar. If the search page doesn't come up, here's a search bar. And so here you can type in the name of a plant or a species. And so here I just typed in Ceanothus, which is a genus, but you can see there's quite a few of them that occur in Oregon. And like this one here is just somebody identified it as Ceanothus. It hasn't been identified farther. But there's a number of Ceanothuses. There's also like Cuneatus, there's subspecies or varieties. This one is a hybrid for some reason. Here's the point raised Ceanothus. Deerbrush is really common in Eastern Oregon, but these are all the different Ceanothus species. And if you just click on just Ceanothus, it will show you all the different species and where they have been collected. So you can see like some are only collected. There's just one collection there. This one's down in the Siskiyous. This one's more widespread into Jeremus. But it's more common like the High Cascades. And so you can look at, if you just know the genus and you want to get more information about those, one that we looked at the other day was Camus. Um, and so the genus name for camas is Chemisia, but I mean, we typically think, oh, there's a camas, but how many of you thought that there were 12 of them? Some of these are subspecies or varieties. I think they're all subspecies. But there's more than you think. And so if you're in the Willamette Valley, you probably want something like Leclinii sextorfii or Chemisia quamash. But you wouldn't want to choose like something that grew down in the Siskiyou or something that only grew in Eastern Oregon. So that can be helpful too. I don't know. And I'm going to go to Quamash since that's the most common. But so if we look at Chemisia quamash, the common camas, you can see that it's all over the place. But then when you go down here, you can see there's different subspecies, and different subspecies grow in different areas. Like here's one that's down in Southern Oregon. Here's one that's pretty widespread, so that'd probably be fine. Here's one that's focused on the Willamette Valley. So this would probably be a better choice for someone in the Portland area. And then there's a garden fact sheet on this one and some more pictures. Of course, the core profile page. But most of us don't differentiate between varieties or subspecies, but it can be important for your garden if you want to get something that's truly native. Some people are more purist than others. I tend to like plants that, this is where it's from, this is where I want to put it. And so it's up to you on how purist you want to be, but do we have any more questions? We have a few more questions.
There was a question about, have you seen any growth in pollinator habitat installations in the areas that you work in the last 5 years?
I know, so I worked for the Bureau of Land Management, and we did put in one pollinator garden. But that's really not the focus of that organization. There have been a lot of pollinator gardens put in around the South Coast area, but they're typically not put in by federal agencies, let me put it that way, because that's simply not their mission. And so, but yeah, I've seen a lot of pollinator habitat installations in this area in the last 5 years. Show the mapping page and how you could search an area for a genus.
Can I respond? Sorry, can I respond to the pollinator habitat one, just since you started that? So north of you, in the Yachats Newport area, there is a crew of volunteers that are known as the pollinator gardeners, and they have a deal with ODOT. And so ODOT gives them different plots, and so they maintain and keep those up, even to the point of having to haul water and weed and everything. So at least on the coast there are, and then I don't think Kim Brown is on right now, but she's with the Bee Cycle here in Portland, and obviously through the Xerces, and there are a lot more pollinator focused installations.
Yes. And ODOT has been really awesome. They have to manage the roadsides to keep it clear and safe for traffic. That's their primary goal. But if you have a great pollinator proposal, or if you know of rare plants that are certain places within the right of way, you can talk to ODOT, and they're really very cooperative. And they would come out and talk to the noxious weed coordinators at at the statewide weed symposium and say, hey, if you have an area that you want to, put in some pollinator plants or put something else in there that's gonna that's not going to conflict with our management, then come talk to us. So they were really awesome. So, that's one way you've seen the adopt a highway or adopt a road where you can pick up trash. Well, with ODOT, you can adopt a highway and actually grow something there.
Yeah,
So,
before you take Paul's question about the mapping page.
yeah,
Yes, so the Portland chapter, including the Mid-Columbia X chapter, we have one of those Adopt a Highway sites outside of Mosier
yeah,
that was actually started over 30 years ago.
that's
But
amazing.
yeah, and it's kind of been a new resurgence to keep it up. And so we
Excellent.
work with ODOT on that.
Yeah, I love hearing about things like that. Okay, Paul, let's go back to this mapping thing and see if I can do what you wanted. Um, so you go to identify plants. They do have a mapping function, which I've never used, so I don't know how this actually works on the mapping function. So I just go to identify plants, and right here they have a higher taxon filter. So say you wanted to look at camas. And then let's just say 1 kilometer. You don't even have to put a number in here, really. And then we'll just pick an area right there and then search. And it came up with 2 different species. One new message.
Well, and I think that Paul was trying to see whether you could filter by area after pulling up all the ceanothus. So I think
Ah,
you would just have to look at those little maps, the little thumbnails of the
okay.
ceanothus to see which ones
Oh,
are
well,
in different parts. I don't know.
let's try it.
Paul, you can unmute to clarify your question too.
Okay.
Pretty soon we'll let everybody unmute so that we can interact.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Paul.
Yeah, I use I haven't used the Identify program. I always use mapping, and in
Okay.
that, all I do is say, where it says taxa, just type in ceanothus as an example, since Robin had a question about that.
Great.
And then so you highlight that. Okay, then go over to the right, and can you see on the upper right of the map, below the stack? So go a little bit farther right. So see, there's like a pentagon and there's a square and a dark dot. Go down your arrow just a little bit down.
Oh, I might not be able to see it because I have the zoom right
Oh,
there.
oh, okay. Uh,
Um, let me see if I can um, minimize that. There we go. Okay, I got it. The pentagon, the square, the
so
circle.
I usually just use the square,
Okay,
and then what you do is you take it over, and for this, let's take it and start it by clicking just above the Columbia River outlet. So go over to your left.
over here.
And so drag it down. I would drag it down to maybe Salem and make a square.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh, okay. So in that case, so it didn't quite work out, but
Okay.
um, I always like to do a larger search area because, you know, as you said, not everything is in a collection, so
Right.
or an
Right.
observation because these are also observations. And then you do search, and then it will bring up, all those little dots are
Right.
ceanothus in that area. You can see over on the left, it has, the collections.
Oh,
Um,
right here.
yeah.
Yeah.
And all I would do then is go back up to where, so keep scrolling up. Okay, see where it says taxa list above your
Yeah.
arrow. Yeah, hit that. And then if you click on each of those, it'll give you that brings up the page, with the pictures and things like that.
Right.
But anyway, you can use that then on the map, on the actual map to
Ah.
um,
Great.
collect what or find out what kinds of members of a genus are there. And then if I want to do a different genus or a different plant, I just go back up to where it says search criteria and options on the left. So click on the green just a little bit higher
Right
right
here.
there.
There we go.
And you
And
can
it goes
change
back.
Ceanothus to say, oh, let's see here. Why don't just put camas, I guess, since we've done that before.
I always spell it wrong.
Yep.
Let's go Camus. There we go.
Yep. And then if you do search again, see it's keeping the same search area. So you
Right.
could search a bunch of different kinds of plants you have ideas about around where you're at.
Right. Oh, that's cool. Thank you. That's really cool. I have on occasion submitted a um GIS polygon, like for the South Slough Reserve, which is 7,000 acres, submitted that polygon to ask, what plants have been mapped in this particular area. And they've been really good at helping me with that. Cool. Well, I learned
And then,
something.
and in addition, I probably should mention you can, expand that over on the right, with the plus and minus to zoom in. And sometimes that will make some of those, when you see the
Oh,
number
that's
inside the
great.
triangle
Yeah,
or the circle, that's the number of collections or observations within that. And if
right.
you clicked on, say, that one right there, where it
The
says
two.
two,
Yeah. Then
so
it
then it
shows you where
shows you
those two
there's
are.
two different
Yeah.
camas plants
And
species
then
there.
you can, I know Ed Alverson, so you can click on those and you can actually see the data. This was collected in 1987, but they didn't know the exact date. So
Yep.
that's pretty cool. But some of these are really old collections, which is
Yep.
is fun to see too. Um, so he collected that in May. But yeah, so you can pull up these actual collections um, where people have collected things and see what the data actually said, which is fun. Yeah, this is great to hear about all the pollinator work. I planted uh, showy milkweed in my yard, hoping that maybe a monarch would show up, but they haven't yet. And my patch is about like 10 feet by 20 feet, but no monarchs yet. So
Again, I guess just to kind of recap what I've mentioned here. Again, you mentioned earlier resources up at the top, that drag down menu, and so the tutorials and tips, maybe just click on that so people can
sure,
see. So, there's a general introduction, but there are, if you have problems, I use it quite a bit when I was just learning, the information about how to use the plant profile pages. It was
right?
really useful to learn how to use the mapping, which they've made
The
easier with
mapping
the
tool.
latest
Yeah,
update.
yeah.
How you can use the identify plants, because it can be used, to actually, like the plant apps, you can go in and I actually identify what a plant is that you've got.
Nice.
And so, there's lots of ways that you can click on those and learn how to use the Oregon Flora website.
Yeah, I'll have to poke around in there more, but that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be a good time too to turn on the audio and video for everybody. So if anybody else has questions, they can ask them.
Great idea. And I put the last link in the chat was the South Chapter Facebook page. And I don't know if she had that open, if Jeannie had that open, but they're doing a garden tour if you want to go all the way to Port Orford.
Yeah. And yeah, we're doing a garden tour on Saturday, the 13th, and it's from Langlois to Port Orford. So it highlights a lot of different gardens in that kind of broad area.
Thank you for showing us all the
Yeah.
different options. And then
Yeah,
Paul, I
and
mean,
thanks
it's
Paul to Paul too. Yeah, it's it's an awesome resource. I used it a lot for planning restoration projects and looking at, particularly grass species, what was around and what would be a good choice for certain areas. But anyway,
I really appreciate this so much. I'm in Astoria, Oregon, and I'm really moving in the direction of putting a lot more native plants in my garden.
great.
And I'm a master gardener here, so I want to share this with them and really hoping to get more pollinators. I've hardly seen any bees so far this year, which is troubling.
It was really a strange year for bees down here too. I mean, early in the spring, usually we see lots of bumblebees, but they just weren't here.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting quite a few, but early on, the bumblebees are suited for colder, wetter conditions, but they just weren't here this early this spring.
Yeah, I'm not seeing them.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope it was useful. It gives you at least a little confidence to go in there and poke around. Because, every situation is different. I can sit here and tell you all kinds of things, but without actually looking at a particular plot of ground, I can't give you a good recommendation.